Welcome everyone to our first conversation panel. Today we're together to speak about busking. So busking.in is a thought. It's really a vision to talk about busking in India, the platforms that we can create for busking, the relevance of busking in our Indian context. And the vision is really to find an actionable plan for busking as a medium for emerging artists, for brands, for audiences, how it connects to people and how it can be a medium for social change, for social conversation. Change can be, a conversation. A conversation starts a change. And today we have a very, very, very illustrious panel, quite honestly. We have, starting from here, we have Rajesh Pratap. He's a designer for decades, and he right now heads Satyapal. Hello, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Nice to be here, ma'am.
Yes. We have Bhavini. She's the director for Urshilla. It's a dance company, and Bhavini herself works very closely with the Kalakar Trust, and she works with a lot of actors, with schools, with many, many different kinds of artists. Thank you, Bhavini, for being here.
Thank you so much.
We have Apurva ma'am. She's the chief marketing officer. Would that be right? But I would say she is at the forefront of KNMA, which is really a cultural center. It started off as a museum, so to say, but today we see them really inviting and making different spaces for different kinds of arts. And thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Amit. Amit is from the other side of the round table, which is his area of expertise would be marketing, experiential branding, really helping brands tell their stories.
Correct.
And how can art and artist kind of find this confluence?
Be a part of it.
Be a part of the conversation.
Sure.
Thank you, Amit, for being here.
Thank you.
We have Sunayana. She is a social behavior expert, I would say, with arts. She is the India expert for One Drug Foundation. She works with the Katputli colony, as well as she's a musician herself. Thank you, Sunayana, so much.
Thank you.
And then we have Sumit. He's an artist, so in the Young Collective, his artwork is on display, as well as he's a musician as well. So thank you so much, Sumit, for being part of the conversation. I would like to start the conversation asking this to everybody. What is your perspective of busking in India today?
That busking is primarily you're doing any performance on the street. If you see in the West, be it US, be it Netherlands, Australia, UK, busking is the most structured. You need
True.
to have a license. So there is a kind of a platform given to all the performance, wherein in India we're still struggling to give them some due respect.
The respect. True.
So that respect, as a museum, we would like to give them and give them a platform and kind of do a confluence of art and the performance.
In India, however, today when you say busking, where do you see busking today? If I was to ask you, Bhavini, where do you see busking today?
I think it's becoming more of a rebellious approach, to be honest. And I think somewhere at the forefront of it, the youths are a little confused about what busking really stands for.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, having witnessed a lot of performances across the country, across, not just at an urban level, but even at a rural level, if you look back, like walking on stilts or walking on tightrope has always been an element of busking. I mean, that is an element of entertaining the audiences, and collecting a certain donation for it. But I think now with a certain level of dancers, especially, I think the younger contemporary and hip hop dancers are finding a merging point. And similarly with a lot of singers and guitarists and musicians, they're finding a merging point. So they're finding spots. You'll see a lot of them coming together. They come at a specific time. You have gymnasts, you have acrobats, you have hip hop dancers, and you have singers. And they come and they jam together. And they're basically calling it a jam, but they're opening it up to a donation system.
A donation space.
So they don't like to really, I've seen that and I've actually noticed that they don't really like to call it busking. They call it more like coming together.
It's a jam, it's a cipher.
It's a cipher. They don't really go with that word.
The word busking.
Plus, they don't go with like they are not there to collect the money or something. They are there to show their talent, their art.
Actually, some artists go specifically with the idea of collecting donations. Like they are brilliant artists and they don't have the platform and they know that they are going to create something. So some people are actually specifically doing it with that purpose because they know that their art has the capacity to get someone to take out money and shell it and put it down in the
And
donation
further
box.
sustain.
Right.
Sunayana, I would ask you this. At the grassroots level, is busking is a part of our ethos and our culture. Would that be accurate? Because the street artists, the folk artists like tightrope, a lot of the circus acts are predominantly. What would you say?
Yeah, in fact, I would say firstly, for me, busking is a word that comes to my mind much later, right? And if we speak from our context, and I think that's what busking should, or performative arts should make us do, is connect to our culture, our context, and be able to interact with what's happening around us in society. So, yes, if we go back to 400 years, we've had storytellers, we've had the puppeteers, we've had so many musicians and different forms of art, like for example the snake charmers. Today, and the law plays such a huge role in defining how street art or public art really develops, right? So while we have an anti-beggary act, so while CP is a popular place, we've also seen young musicians being chased away by the police. The police and the authorities are confused about how to recognize art, how to give respect and dignity to those artists. So it's something that has existed, and the idea of calling it busking may be attractive to an urban audience, but I think we should definitely think and build on what already exists in our traditions and giving them a more dignified space, like you're saying. So whether it's in cities and where the law also makes provisions through our master plans for spaces for art and culture, to society actually connecting with our artists and respecting them more. So for me, busking therefore becomes a more intimate, direct interaction with your audience, and it's not about being very commercialized or anything. It's really about being able to connect and share your art and keep it alive in that public space.
And it also takes a lot of courage to do that. I think some dancers and some musicians I see who literally run, like they know
away.
They know that this is the time when they have some friend or somebody, and it's so painful to see that because they're not doing anything wrong per se.
If I may add, talking about running, people had to run for their lives. The largest street performer settlement in our country, Katpatli Colony, was brought down, and there were so many conversations that even artists tried to have and represent with the government about how actually arts can be kept alive, rather than us saying, oh, art is dying. How we actually, what are we doing to keep it alive and creating those spaces again? Because if there's no space,
what are you going to do?
How many artists are going to go on to digital platforms? How many artists have internet? Like especially in the rural context where we work as One Drop Foundation as well, it really becomes, even from the audience to the artists, they don't have great internet connectivity or the money or the access. So it's best to kind of preserve these public spaces as well as kind of encourage those art forms which come from the past as well as the more contemporary times.
So my next question here is, as busking, whether we call it busking, whether we call it jamming, a cipher, is it meant for a certain type or an age of an artist? When I say age, as in, is it for emerging artists, it is for mid-career artists, it's for established artists? Like for me, for fashion, for example, there are very clear patterns. When you're a young designer, you go to college, you have a year-ending, thing, that fashion show. And then you start going to other such, you have a structured way of growing. Can busking or something like this be placed in one of those career progressions for artists?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it should depend on the artist, whatever they want to do. In fact, I think busking is more relevant for already established artists to do it the other way around.
How come?
You know, people who are already established, they need to reconnect.
Very
That's
valid, very
a
valid.
very important thing. Young artists, obviously, they are doing it because they have lack of opportunity. But I guess, you know, it's everybody's responsibility to give them a platform, a safe place to perform. But for people who are already established, they need to reconnect. And for them, it's more important than the other way around. For them to even survive, it's important. So,
Super,
like you
yeah.
mentioned, fashion, it's important that to keep fashion relevant, we need to keep doing this.
True. There's an interesting perspective that some artists share, that in busking, you are really putting the artist at a disadvantage because the audience may or may not react, or it may see you at a lower light because you're not in a proscenium space, in a defined space. You're not in a proscenium space. There is a reason why generally a stage is not the same level as the audience. वो थोड़ी elevated क्यों होती है? So there is a lot of thought of that busking puts the artist in a challenged space. What reactions?
But I contradict here. Now the time has changed. I think maybe 5 years or 6 years back, this thought might be right, but now people don't think that way.
Yeah.
So they think as if, because now the narrative of, I think, post-pandemic, people's creativity have really changed a lot. Their thinking pattern has changed a lot. And like what Rajesh said, that whether you are an acclaimed artist or you are an emerging artist, busking, you need audience.
Everybody needs an audience.
Everybody needs an audience. We all are working in whichever sphere for people.
I will ask you, Amit, from the experiential marketing, from the other kind of people who may be consumers of the art experience, does editing of an artistic expression actually aid?
Because it was socially defined, it did matter to them. Because a premium brand would like to have a premium artist at a premium location, correct? But right now I'll just explain how does it work in the brand side. We define it into two ways. Experiential is one, and then shopper behavior. So people now say that, I've been talking to many people, that today people are experimental. The way they can change their drinks, the way they eat, the way they wear. Suddenly sneakers are on, suddenly Puma was on, and so on and so forth. So experimental is on. But there are two kinds of experimentation. One, when I have not done anything and I want to experiment that, and then if I like, I may do another commitment. If I don't like, I leave it. I withdraw. The second experimentation happens when I know for sure that I will not like it, but I still want to try. Maybe my wife said, try karo. So this is one. So in case busking, people, if they try, and if they like, probably there's a way ahead. The second part was a shopper behavior. So shopper behavior is something that some clan, they try to create they change our behavior. For example, in 80s, we changed our behavior from Indian breakfast to cereals, right? Then from Nibu Pani to Cokes. So there was a behavioral change from bucket wash to a washing machine wash. So right now, it is very much possible that how we change that behavior. I think busking.in has a huge opportunity to redefine and break those definitions, socially accepted, socially not accepted. Like you said, a platform elevated was little more premium and more socially accepted. And on the ground and suddenly anywhere, because the police, for them, on their parameter, this is not accepted. And they are doing their job. Okay, anything which is not accepted and pulls any kind of crowd, because India has many kind of crowds. So ACC, C minus crowd, they think if they gather, there'll be a hooligans here and there'll be any kind of people in CP, they may not accept it correctly, and therefore they will redefine it negatively that this busking is creating a nuisance. So for me, I think right now in the marketing paradigms totally are shifting. How it is shifting? So earlier it used to matter that how my campaign should be up. Right now, how the campaign story should be narrated is people are getting more interested. But Very seldom people go to the marketeers and tell them, look, this is the campaign. But the story behind this campaign is now more important. Earlier, only campaign used to be visible for the audience. Right now, they are more interested that if this is the campaign, how should I make my story different, more intriguing? So this engagement is something which we look forward to, wherein we can narrate the story behind the buskers, not the busking.
The buskers and not the busking. Yes. Interesting. Buskers, not the busking. I would like to, Sunayana, exactly. I was going to come to that. Yeah.
It's so interesting to also hear what Amit is saying, and even though I'm not from a marketing background, I think working with One Drop Foundation, which comes from the Cirque du Soleil, and it was started and founded by them. So it's a huge entertainment company now. They perform the circus in a very professional way across the world. But at the same time, they come from a very basic grassroots of social circus practice. And what's wonderful is that this kind of social art, right? And this is what we've been talking about, that it has so much of a reach. As much as we appreciate how art is growing and in different private spaces, how they have been able to also kind of bring public art to life in over 13 countries. And just in India, for example, we've reached over 5 or 6 lakh people in rural areas. So it's,
what is the messaging like? What is the messaging like?
So again, and here I would say the focus is not on entertaining, like the end of entertaining people, right? We also work on behavior change and social change, but here again it's about the artists. We put the artists in the center, and it's even stronger when the artists come from communities we work with. So folk art, for example, is about reflecting on our rituals, our cultures, our livelihoods, our work. So if this thing of the audience and calling them hooligans, I think it's about connecting with your audience better, right? So the content that goes out also should be connecting to the audience. And while we work in the rural sector, we work on access to water, we work on water quality, and these are also difficult concepts to
verbalize, to vocalize, to kind of bring forward
in local context. But that's what we have to challenge ourselves with, to make art accessible. And in urban areas too, I would say that as much as we are encouraging busking, we should not see it only as a Western concept, because we have so many languages, dialects, and tremendous amount of art forms in our own country, right? And urban centers have half the population of our country now.
Absolutely.
So why do we
only look at that one part?
Why do we see urban centers as only English speaking? Or we have people who would appreciate Bhojpuri, folk storytelling or music. We would have people who appreciate Malini Avasthi from UP, for example. So why not give space to those artists? But at the same time, the idea of bringing more established artists, I think it's a great idea, because they also need to think of how they occupy such spaces. And when we talk about collaborations, I wish we think of it as technology or the more established, not replacing old art forms, but actually collaborating with older traditional art forms.
So taking from this, one thing is definitely that busking is a space that can invite conversation, that can invite collaboration, can invite audience. Can busking also be, or for a lack of better word, I'm saying busking, as a revival movement of giving and bringing people in the forefront which still do what they did. Not only where we are going towards, like, a very famous choreographer, movement artist once said, a movement never lies. Who you are comes out in your art. Your history is part of your art. And if you don't look at your history, your future is never going to be complete, because you are not you are many generations that have resulted in your consciousness today and will go forward. So how much does that take into account? Rajesh, I want to speak to you, because your philosophy of design or people or all of these things, I've seen them to be very experimental and collaborative and very narrative. How does the past have a space in engaging with today, even if busking is a medium?
So first of all, if you're honest with what you're doing, you don't have to really worry about the past. You know,
Okay,
it
yeah.
will automatically come.
True.
I'm from a small village in Rajasthan. I don't have to prove it again and again.
True.
It will come through, right? I mean, honestly, I'm not too insecure about losing it. We should see everything as much as we can, and then be honest with what we are doing. So if a language is endangered, it has to stay relevant. If, you know, I know I'll upset people, but if Sanskrit is not relevant, it's not relevant. And it's a beautiful language. It's an amazing language. But we have to make sure that, people who want to save this language have to make sure that it's easy for everybody to understand and use it.
The accessibility of something defines their relevance today.
If it is taught in a way, or if it is such a burden, and if it's not relevant, it will die.
Correct.
And that's evolution. Which
That's
holds true
evolution.
for any art form, it holds true for anything, language, it holds true for textiles. So that's the way it is.
I'm going to bring this to now the artist in the room. How important is the journey as a busker, being in that kind of an audience space, where the difference between the audience and you is very different connection. How does it work in an artist's journey?
Actually, I just want to say that this
Coming from the point of relevance, actually,
Relevance.
how does that play?
It's a dichotomy, Shohini, because in the sense that when I think of it from the point of view of what everybody's been saying, this recent experience that I had with 500 dancers of Republic Day Parade.
Yeah.
So, so these dancers were from all over the country. Okay, not just from they were hardly from Delhi and Bombay actually. They were from all over. There were these beautiful peacock dancers from Telangana, and there were these amazing artists who had come down from Assam. So it was just it was overwhelming to see how much there is. I actually didn't know of a couple of forms myself. Like I've worked with folk dancers and I've done a lot of work with tribal dancers. So my point is that how much, when we talk about busking as a concept in the arena that we are in, where we are today, how much of it do we really understand in terms of what we want to present? Okay, that is the first thing I think as an artist that needs to be checked upon, needs to be understood upon. Like if I'm just doing the same thing every single time, am I really growing as an artist? What is my vision? So at the end of the day, busking or not busking, the point for every artist is what is my vision?
What is my voice?
What is my voice? Where am I headed? And if I'm only going to be speaking kindergarten through my entire lifetime, then there's no point. I need to also be willing to understand that there's a lot more that I need to gather and garner in myself. Like I think every dancer, every artist for that matter, is an eternal student.
Absolutely.
So busking's relevance can only make sense when for an audience, like for example, if every week I'm going to be in that one spot and doing something that the audience is eventually from maybe 20, it's going to go down to 10 and then finally 3. But if I come every once in a month and come with a prepared plan, I think that is where buskers need to also understand that just randomly doing stuff. So the only place where I think randomness can work is hip hop, because
Because it's such a vibe.
It's such a vibe, and there's so much of training that goes into their bodies, whether they're b-boying over it. So when they just freestyle it, it's okay. But for a contemporary dancer, if he's not trained with musicality, and if he's just going to randomly stand and use his limbs and isometrically move without really understanding nazakat, abhinaya, if he doesn't know all these things, then over a period of time, he's going to lose his audience.
That's a beautiful point. So, in fact, I was having a very heated debate with another artist about the fact that as an artist, you work with many kind of collaborators. You work with event companies, you work with fashion houses, you work with students, you work with schools, you work with a lot of people, and you get a lot of feedback about your thoughts, your artwork. But at some place, they are consuming you in a monetary interaction, which means it's a concept you give you, something, it's service you provide. I think having a space where you're able to get a real for the lack of a better word, a real feedback, a real, impact. It's almost like a blind case impact study of what does my art do to people? Does it connect? Does it move? Is what I envision, is it going somewhere? Are you able to feel what what I want you to, or what I'm feeling? And that's such a great litmus test for established, for emerging, for anybody to kind of have this space. And that I feel, obviously, somebody else was like, yeah, but Delhi mein log dekh ke chale jate hain, wo haste hain, wo ye karte hain. I'm like, how much empowerment are you going to give them?
But that
to yourself.
But Shohini, doesn't that happen in a show also?
Everywhere.
Yeah. Like in a show, you may even in a show you will have like out of 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 people, you will have maybe just like 100
people who will say, who you get, especially contemporary things.
Yeah.
I want to move to you now. You have visual arts and you paint and you do so many things. Do you create art for people to get it?
No, I don't. I think I create art for my process. I really enjoy being in the process of it. But end of it, I just keep going into different, taking it to different rooms, different places, different mediums. Like, I do not think so I articulate the best with words. But I think I would have like an artwork to tell you like, yo, this is what I think. Or this is how I think that design could work. Or this is how I think like probably this song could work. And regardless of what the monetary is and everything is, my initial idea is like, what's the feedback that I'm getting in different audiences, in different rooms, and that is where my personal editing with my particular work goes through, and as in how I evolve as an artist or any practitioner. Like,
it enriches you as an artist.
Correct. So I just focus on that, and that is the personal editing that I would like for me to protect and help my art progress. And would want spaces like KNMA or a fashion show which brings in all of these art forms. You know what, it is absolutely okay for you to come b-boy here. And just we need enabling more. And editing should be an artist.
That is actually what Busker.in is kind of trying to create, is platform for collaboration, for stories, for traditional arts, for all kinds of arts actually to come together. I want to ask you, Amit, from the whole brand, these are very big words, brand, messaging, experiential, marketing?
Yes.
Marketing.
Juxtaposition.
How does art, performing arts, play into this thing? Very bad person trying to answer this question, but I think you understand. From our previous conversations, we were like, what is this experientialness?
So see, I think we are all humans, and humans somewhere like still to connect with other humans. So to do this, you have to have a very open emotions, correct? So all this while, from the marketing side, they have a lot of limitations. Time for ma'am, you would understand. I have to roll this campaign.
Yeah, I don't see you as marketing, sorry.
So on the other side of the table, there is always lack of time. They need everything jaldi, and sometimes the fillers. This is being used as fillers most of the time, with all due respect. And then this is how it is happening. So what I want that from the brand side, we should tell them that it is not an element of fillers. What this as buskers or whatever we are defining them or redefine them after some time. What kind of experience will they create for the client's campaign, and how they will end up getting different kind of result? Because in experiential, no matter what is happening, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a concert, whether it's an art gallery, so people go, they may connect, they may not connect, they will say I met, but people will only connect when they feel there's an experience, and that experience is maybe different for different people. But if we can create an experience rather than just putting those elements. So for example, if I take a busker and sell it to a marketer saying that, we have ABC buskers, please take them order, you need to pay them this much, and we'll create a footfall for you. There's a launch. So this is a bad way, because if the budget doesn't work, they will say remove these buskers, call a stand-up. Correct? Because as of now, the stand-up communication is in. So we should ideally change our packaging, and we go and say that there's an experience that we can create on that particular day, and tell this narration of the story before the campaign. That this story the right storytelling should be communicated by the agency people to the client so that they understand there's a lot of story that I can create after the busking happens and tell the people. But that was this power of experience selling rather than element selling and narration of the story. If you know the right narration, right experience.
So the narrative of the entire marketing has changed.
That's where I was going to come to you.
This is basically
Storytelling and
it is
experience.
storytelling and the experience that you're giving.
Shohini, I think there's one very important point that's coming out here, which we should all acknowledge. And Amit has mentioned emotions like a couple of times, right? And emotions are the heart of art and that
of humanity. Emotion is the heart of humanity.
Correct. So at the same time, like, so therefore the artist, of course, is aware of and should be aware of the emotions we as artists they are creating for their audience. But at the same time, it's good to also try and understand a little more the perceptions and the emotions that the audience is coming with also. So there, I think it has to be a more interactive and collaborative process. As much as we respect artists' rights and their freedom of expression, I think it has to be becoming more sensitive towards creating more sensitive audiences.
I think in the earlier the artists were little monologue, but now it is more dialogue. There is a dialogue between the audience and the artist, which is very much required, and I'm very happy that all the emerging artists are considering this fact.
Absolutely. I'm going to now kind of pull the conversation back. We're going to close. I think in conclusion for me, for Busker.in, for me, for Manu, this is the starting of a conversation which will move to change. And the way we were talking about licensing, about creating safe spaces, probably it can start with private spaces opening up.
Correct.
Like KNMA has, like I'm hoping other places in Delhi, NCR, in metros, in smaller cities, creating those safe spaces for collaborations to happen, in studios, for narratives to happen. And then we can see how freedom of speech, how rights of artists, IPs, all of these things, I think that's a part of a second conversation. But I would like to thank everybody for being part of the conversation. Thank you. This was super. We all speak in silos, but being part of one table and kind of jamming on it has been really awesome.
All thanks to Manu.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Manu. Thank you to Busker.in.
Thank you so much. And I think what is important as a take back for a lot of the artists who might be watching this, I think it's important for every single one to kind of open up their range.
And reach out.
And really connect and come together, because that's what Baithaks are all about.
Absolutely.
Right? Time immemorial,
Yes.
like mixed multimedia. So that's the idea. Yeah.